So this is just going to be hopefully a quick video, and I hate really talking about diseases in fishes. I might have done my degree in biology and my master's in biology, but I didn't study veterinary. Degrees might work differently here to America, but I did do modules in physiology and also in biochemistry, but I mostly focused on sort of evolution, ecology, also well, actually quite a lot of physiology. Actually, I'm really interested in physiology, but mostly evolution, phylogenetics, stuff like that. And of course, a lot of people worry when their fish doesn't look right, and it is stressful. And what I can say is it's actually really difficult to narrow things down. There aren't as many papers or studies on, let's say, neotropical fishes, which are South American fishes, or even tropical fishes in general. Most papers really focus on fishes that make a lot of money, and these are fishes you generally will eat. So salmons, there's loads of papers on them. There's usually quite a few on carp. Generally anything that makes a lot of money, and sadly the aquarium trade doesn't really, it's not focused on one species. There's thousands, and of course some might have a little bit more focus on papers than others. Goldfish, discus. Generally you want, for a species to, if you want to study it, you want it to be cheap, easy to reproduce, easy to feed, easy to keep. Discus probably not entirely the easiest. Generally the price is the big thing, but goldfish make a really good model organism. This means for some taxa mean the group of fishes, it's easier to actually find diseases that target them. There's lots of misconceptions on diseases. As with all organisms, diseases tend to target certain physiologies or certain taxa. So you will have common organs within all animals or groups of animals. So say fishes, generally most of them have a swim bladder. Most of them have eyes. Most of them have a heart. And then you can draw assumptions on certain diseases of that. When it comes to pathogens, really, they will specialise more so in usually certain taxa. So lymphocytis is actually quite an interesting one, because as far as we know, it doesn't actually, there's been no proof that it does actually target carp and catfishes. So that's quite interesting when you actually read scientific papers on the topic, because a lot of people will see these growths and say lymphocytis, but actually there's many different diseases that can have very similar what would it be, morphology maybe. So herpes viruses being one, they're generally very specific to certain groups. They don't transmit well, say, from maybe lorcarids to another type of catfish, but it really depends. And there's also, it's a little bit difficult. There's also bacteria that look very similar, and it's very difficult to sort of identify. Vets, obviously, if you get a specialist vet, they'll be able to help, and also you need to work, labs will be really helpful using a microscope. But even if you can use a microscope, how do you identify the actual pathogens, and how do you separate what is actually pathogenic, which is actually damaging the fish, and what is just present there anyway, because the slime coat, intestines, all of that have a whole ecosystem involved. And I think this is kind of important to recognise. And you can spend your life studying one type of pathology, and you might not know about another. And I did use microscopes during my degree. I currently use it a little bit more to look at general morphology, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to identify every single protozoa. And I think even people that study protozoa are shocked by the diversity and new morphologies, different ones, and there's a lot in aquariums that are just there as scavengers, filter feeders, stuff like that. And we do know so little about, I think as a hobby there's so many generalisations. White spot's a common one that's mentioned. White spot is, well, obviously it forms white cysts on the fish. There's also epistasis is similar. This is, whereas white spot, I can't remember the scientific name, it's a protozoa. Epistasis, I think, I was going to say bacteria, but it might not be. But then use it for treating for white spot. It's quite characteristic, white spot actually, and there seems, I don't know whether there is several strains, so I really need to look at it again, and really, because I've not experienced it properly in a long time. It's treated with protozoan targeting treatments such as copper, formalin, formaldehyde. Then you've got also fluke cysts look similar. Fluke cysts, those treatments I'm going to target that you want something like fluobenzol, levinazole and praziquantel. So, and there's many different diseases will have very similar visual, and I think when it comes to microscopes it helps a little bit more. One thing I will say is that books can be incredibly useful if you can't use scientific papers or can't access them. There is paywalls, and books can have diseases you might not have thought of, and the internet really does forget. And generally the main thing, the most important thing, is maintaining the fish's health in general, so preventing diseases with preventative health measures, preventative care. So maintaining water quality, reducing stress, reducing the fact that the chance of fish getting damaged. So maybe if you've got a very high territorial, very territorial fishes together, maybe not doing that, because the more they get damaged, the more stress they're getting, but also the more wounds they're getting, that they can be an entry point for different pathogens. And generally you've got to think almost similar to other animal health, but the problem is that getting a vet might be a little bit more difficult than otherwise. And so it's really difficult to even talk about fish health in the case of pathogens, diseases, and disease just means something that's gone wrong in a way. That's a really bad definition, but it's something that's not quite, so it can be neurological things are reasonably common, I would say, especially when I've seen koi really bash themselves hard against a pond setup, and that could easily cause issues. Oxygen deficiency to the brain, sturgeons, that's taking them out of water for too long, obviously that's going to cause issues, as it would with other organisms. Environmental, you've got damage to organs from different toxins, ammonia, nitrites, heavy metal, stuff like that. You've also got, I had one in mind, nutrient deficiencies, or too much of a nutrient that becomes a toxin. Diaminase poisoning can look very similar to maybe swim bladder disorders or a neurological disorder, and diaminase poisoning does cause neurological issues anyway. So there's a lot to narrow down, especially when it comes to diet, and I think you could be trained for so long and it's still very difficult, and when you are trained you're probably trained in a very specific taxa, likely fisheries, because that's where you're going to get paid. And there's other sort of diseases, obviously pathogenic, congenital, genetic disorders are, well, genes, when the genes are being transcribed, the whole genetic code is, there's always going to be mistakes, and that's how evolution works, but that also can provide different genetic defects, or mutations would be a better word, but stuff like albinism, leucism, so anything that protein is being coded differently for. So I'm going to stop that there because I want to talk about another disease, probably in a video I might post today or later this week, about a disease that I never saw mentioned, or it was mentioned wrong, but I think it's quite interesting, and I found it in an older book. So anyway, thank you. I'm not going to be talking about diseases much. I want to talk about colour change. Actually no, this is probably related to diseases, but colour changes in lower cards, specifically xanthism, which is changes to gold colour. And I generally would like to talk about Pathogens because it's a beautiful species, just generally body shape. I'm not keen on colours particularly, but it's quite an interesting fish, and the amount of different colour changing species, or the fish that can potentially change colour, and so it's something interesting to mention, and that's all I've got planned at the moment. Obviously can't really do an update. I plan on getting see wild discus, so it'd be for that tank, and that tank's changed quite a bit. I've kind of done some shifting around. I'm still deciding what to do with the Stenker discus because they're not really my thing. But anyway, thank you for watching. If you like my videos, please subscribe, comment, like, whatever. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.